Oh, perfect. Hello.
Hello. Hang on.
Hello.
Putting its volume. So we're just waiting for Anne.
Mhm.
Make sure I close all my windows. That I see. Let's
That's
see.
what I was doing right now too.
Where did my notes go? Here we go. I am so tired of sitting in front of this computer all day.
That, that was me yesterday since like 6 in the morning.
Oh, geez. Make sure I make this a little bigger.
Mhm.
So, how are you guys?
Good, good. How are you guys?
Okay. I'm trying to make my font a little smaller so I can see this whole screen. There we go. It has to be small enough to see the whole screen, but big enough so I can read it.
That's why I'm wearing my glasses today.
It's like I've been nearsighted forever, and it's just lately, like in the last year, that my uh near vision started to go. So every once in a while, my eyes get really tired. I'm like suddenly can't read stuff that's like right in front of my face. I'm like, ah, I didn't
Yeah.
used to have that problem, so I don't have like these aren't bifocals. Like
Oh,
bifocals. I'm gonna put my phone on airplane mode. With my luck, everybody's gonna try to start calling me. And waiting for
yeah. Um,
recording. Oh shoot, I think so. I think I automatically set it for an hour. Oh, I just need to set a timer too. So what I figured, we need to talk in each segment for a minimum of 7 minutes, but no more than like 14. So just try to keep an eye on the clock so we don't go way over.
yeah. I think if we do like a good back and forth session on the topics and our what we have gotten written down, I think it would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure that each one of us.
It's like a
Oh,
minute and a
hello.
half. Oh. Mhm.
Oh, there we are. I was gonna say, who's
Sorry,
that?
sorry.
Hi,
That's my
Anne.
husband.
Okay, so everybody's here. We can hear everybody and see everybody. That's a good thing. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and get started. So let me start the stop watch just so we can keep track of time. And if you guys notice that we're like going way over, just say, hey guys, we need to move on, whatever. So it's good to see you all. So let me see. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started. If you guys are ready,
Yes.
cool. Okay, so welcome to the Echoes of Heritage Unveiling Chicanx and Latinx Family Dynamics podcast. Um, this semester, the students of Professor Mario Alberto Obando's Chicano Studies class at Cal State Fullerton was given an assignment to produce and publish a podcast discussing the central themes of the class. The Chicano Studies class was completely online, which made it challenging to produce this podcast as members of our learning community have never met in person. Each of our four segments will feature a collaborative discussion between the members of our learning community based on the research we have conducted throughout the semester. The aim of the class is to explore Chicanx and Latinx families through the lens of storytelling, emotive histories, labor and gender, gender variance and sexuality, and Central American undocumented migration. So the first segment will detail how the class participation activities with our learning communities and listening to examples of recorded podcasts help us to prepare for our own podcast recording. In the second segment, we will discuss how understanding of Chicanx and Latinx families and how they and their communities are formed. Segment three will have us discuss how a history of gender, labor, and structural violence is critical to understanding the dynamics of Chicanx and Latinx families, how they live, love, thrive, and sometimes fail. Segment four will focus on sexuality and how genderqueer and queer Latinx individuals and families endure violence, and how practices that allow genderqueer and queer Latinx families survive and thrive. So once again, I'd like to welcome you to the Echoes of Heritage Unveiling Chicanx and Latinx Family Dynamics podcast. My name is Anna Jones. I would love to have the members of my learning community introduce themselves, first of all. Zulema, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Zulema E, and I'm glad to be part of this podcast today.
Nice to see you too. Okay, and Nicki, I think you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Nicki. I'm glad to be here.
And Anne.
Hello everyone, my name is Anne Nguyen. Okay. It's very nice to join us in this podcast. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be fun, I think. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the first segment, which is exploring how the participation activities we were given and the podcast that we listened to helped to prepare us for the production of this podcast. As I stated before, this class is completely online. None of us have ever met physically face to face. So this is going to be interesting. We get through it with no technical difficulties. So Professor Obando assigned readings and films focused on the experience of Chicanx and Latinx families and how the relationships are often challenged internally within the families and externally due to expected gender norms, views on deviancy from norms, violence, separation, and undocumented migration to a country that often demonizes and dehumanizes individuals. So the participation and assignments for this course consisted of reading articles and book chapters, watching films and documentaries, and listening to podcasts before recording a short video to our own learning community, which in this case consists of us 4 individuals here. And we were then asked to express what we believe to be the themes and main points of the content. We were then asked to watch the video posts from our learning community and to summarize these themes. So doing these assignments helped us to prepare for the podcast in several different ways. Video postings, for one, allowed us to get comfortable talking and expressing our ideas on camera, because unless you guys do a lot of TikTok videos or Instagram videos, I'm not usually making videos at all. I don't usually make video phone calls. At work, I work in a grocery store, so I work with people face to face. So the fact that I had to do these videos, and I have to admit, I was really, really uncomfortable at first. That very first video was a struggle for me. So another way, we were also asked how the listening to the podcast helped. Well, for me, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time. I've picked up some and dropped others depending on the content or just how the hosts either tell the story if they're a single host or how they interact with each other. So listening to the Alchemist Manifesto podcast by Professor Obando and by, let's check my notes here because my short-term memory is terrible. Professor Daniel Topete, who was, I believe, from Cal State LA, was helpful because it was a conversation between 2 people, and they were very respectful to each other. They were well informed on the topics, and it was obvious that they had created a safe space for each other to discuss these topics without worry of confrontation, dismissiveness, or condensation from the other party. So this is going to be very important with us because we need to make sure that we acknowledge that we have our own opinions, we have different backgrounds, but we respect each other, and we are going to listen to each other, and whenever necessary, ask for clarification on what we're saying. So that's some of the things I've taken away from this. So I lost some of my notes. So I'm sorry, was it Nicki or Zulema? One of you was in charge of segment 2, I think. We should probably just go in order, and you guys can go ahead and talk about what you think about how the assignments and listening to the podcast helped you prepare.
Anne?
Oh yeah, so me, yes. So I believe that this question is about how our participation and interaction in the learning community prepared us for this podcast project. So I think what the professor said from the beginning of this course was true. Participation in our learning community has prepared us, I hope, well, for the podcast project. Recording and sharing weekly videos help me articulate my thoughts clearly and connect with classmates, especially with you guys, making me more comfortable speaking and sharing ideas. You all know that English is not my first language, so I have to get out of my comfort zone. It's kind of challenge, but I like it. I hope you all like it. So interacting with classmates, videos, and giving feedback help me understand different perspectives, such as Zulema's insights on gender roles in Chicanx families, enriching my knowledge for podcast discussion. So from the podcast module, we learned some useful strategies like effective storytelling to make our discussion engaging and relatable, ethical consideration to approach topics with respect, and collaborative dialogue to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. So I hope that this experience and lessons have equipped us to create an insightful and respectful podcast on Chicanx and Latinx families. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
And Zulema.
Yes. Okay. So going back to what Anna was saying, I'm a server, so I deal with people firsthand too, and I tend to get a little shy behind a camera. So this has been like very challenging, but I love it. I love to step out of my comfort zone. So I believe how the professor had set up the modules really helped us engage with one another, having the weekly reflections of having to constantly go back to see what we were taking away from the courses entirely was really helpful. And it made us express how we can open our minds just a little, just because, like we had stated before, we all do come from different backgrounds and have different perspectives of the what we're perceiving. So I think that the weekly reflections really helped us entirely to be prepared for this podcast and give one another the chance to speak. It definitely gave us an idea to continue on with the material as well entirely, as the professor did that to for us to be prepared for this. So that's a little props to him. So definitely I want to say something that was really helpful too was the archives of pain mythologies of care, the caring for the gold and diamonds in 1992 notes of Al Moreno. A quote that I had taken away from that I thought was really helpful was the urgency and vitality of methods of archiving, and caring for the stories of indigenous Chicano / O and or Latina / O elders reframes the meta narratives of the past of tangent and the compliment. Oh, excuse me, long words. The compliment lies and positions us in the ethics of intimacy with the past and present, life-giving and energizing. So entirely that just wraps around to us hearing one another and engaging with the different echoes, as our title proposes, of stories among the whole course.
All right. So we get to understand the weekly assignments by listening to each other's perspective on the concepts, and then that helped me understand the courses more. So like I like how like we all have different perspectives. And then the participation activities and interaction prepares us for the podcast by giving us space to think about the complexities of Chicanx and Latinx families and communal formations. Also, I was shy too during the first video. I felt like I did open up more, but now I'm feeling it again. I feel shy again as I repeat the podcast. Let's see. Also, I feel like the main goal here is to have a collaborative environment for teaching and learning, and like everything that we did for the class help us dive deeper into understanding the complexities of Latinx families by like learning about the labor exploitation, racism, familial storytelling, emotive, the Bracero familial histories, the strike, the gender variance, queer Latinx families, and undocumented parenting. So everything that we've been learning, it's yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of just like built on top of each other.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely for sure. All right. So I think so far we're doing pretty well. So and I believe we can go ahead and move on to segment number 2, which I believe you will be introducing. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. So moving forward to segment number 2, the question is, how does our course allow us to articulate a nuanced, complex, and diverse understanding of Chicanx and Latinx family, familial, and communal formations? So for me, yes, our course has given us a nuanced understanding of Chicanx and Latinx family. We learned the importance of storytelling in maintaining cultural identity. On week 2, Professor Obando said that our ancestral connections and sense of belonging can help us challenge and rethink our assumptions about our current reality. It allows us to connect this land with community, with family, though not thinking of ancestor as romanticized dead, but actually living entities in our day-to-day lives. So I believe that you all remember the reading archive of Penn. It's very interesting. It shows how preserving family memories can help Latinx individuals resist negative stereotypes and connect deeply with their cultural and family history. By treating these stories with care and respect, we can find pride and strength in their heritage. So this really inspired me to reflect on my own family's history of Vietnamese immigrants and plan to preserve it for the future generation. So right now, my daughter, and ensuring that they understand and appreciate their roots. So that's my part of segment 2. May I ask Nikki, can you share yours?
Oh yes. See, to add on to yours about the archives, also like by learning our family's history and to pass down stories as familial legacy helps us understand and articulate a new sense, complex and diverse understanding of Chicanx and Latinx familial and communal formations. So creating maps to understand our family's roots and histories can be a powerful and beautiful thing to experience. Also like in addition to this, it gives us an opportunity to sense the beauty of the sacred journey, with our ancestors of past, present, and future. Like kind of like what you said, Anne, you're passing it down to your daughter, and our daughters can pass it down to her daughter and her daughter. So it keeps going down. And I feel like acknowledging and sharing our familial history and past brings us closer to each other. And yeah, okay. That's
Thank you.
head on.
Um, so next, Anna, would you like to add something?
Sure. So in the chapter 6 of the book written by Anna Elizabeth Rosas, it's titled Hidden from History, Photo Stories of Love. We saw how even despite long distance separations from family members in the Bracero program, which was, for context, the program in which Mexican young men traveled to the United States to work on farms, to help American farms pick produce, but often at a great cost to their own families and loved ones. So some young men were single, some were in romantic relationships, and some were married. And so they had to endure these separations with the US government trying to keep the communication to as minimal as possible, which was already difficult enough considering so many of the participants were illiterate. And the main way that families maintained connections was through photographs. But at the same time, the United States government did not appreciate women sending photos that were in any way considered to be risque or sexual. And at the same time, young women, especially single young women, had to worry about their reputations being tarnished if they were found out to be sending photos to their boyfriends or fiancés. Just the fact it's kind of laughable to us now, considering what we see all the time. But this was vital because not only could the women's reputations be tarnished and they could be considered loose women, and therefore find it difficult to find a partner, but the men could also face deportation and be evicted from the program. So just the fact that so many families took the chance, and young women and men took the chance to exchange these photographs to maintain their connections, because once again they were illiterate. Writing letters was difficult. They would probably have to have somebody else write it and or read it for them, and they would risk being caught as well, but they risked it anyway for the sake of love and family. And that's pretty poignant.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah. Zulema, please.
Yes, I definitely agree. That story alone proves to us how deep of a connection you must feel to go to the extent to risk your entire identity in the social medias. I like that. I personally think that's scary. I don't know if I would have that in me.
Mhm.
So I definitely give respect to these families who had to endure such pain to keep such connections alive. So definitely, I want to go even into the mining strike material we covered. That was another, I believe, example of the extent that families are willing to go for one another, where the women have to step up for the men, even though the men would feel comfortable with that at all whatsoever. So it shows that women have so much love that they're willing to do this for their men, even though the risk of breaking gender roles and the risk of being banished from cultural norms, because that wasn't a norm back then. So it proves to us that you have to step out of your comfort zone a lot when you're trying to prove the kind of connections you have in your family dynamics.
Yes, thank you. So now we move into segment number 3.
Mhm.
Yes,
All
Nikki.
right. So segment number 3. So interventions in understanding Chicanx familial formations. So the couple of the examples I used was actually about the Priscilla program and the strike. So let's see. Uh, so the Bracero program can create familial separation as well as economic exploitation. The program had no intention of supporting workers. A lot of men suffered due to work conditions, environment conditions, low wages, and exploitation. Some young women were expected to have a chaperone by their side when they were taken send photos. It was their responsibility to not arouse the suspicion of the U.S. and Mexican government authorities. These young women could not afford to have their photographs be misinterpreted. Photos were risky, but it was a way to have connection and to prove to themselves that love is still there. Despite the challenges that the families faced during the Bracero program, they were able to persevere with the power of love. Okay. All right. That's it from me. Who's next?
I'll go next, I guess. Okay, so the one thing we have to take into account is that violence doesn't have to be physical, it can also be emotional or psychological. So the fact that during the Bracero program that the families were separated for a large part of a year, often for many years at a time, was traumatic for both the males participating in the program and the families left behind. So girlfriends, wives, children, a lot of children grew up barely knowing their fathers, unfortunately. And not only was that the mistreatment that the men faced, they were treated like cattle. They were disposable. If someone got hurt or killed, the families were very rarely compensated in any way. And they were just replaced with someone else who was willing to do the work. So the fact that the people were dehumanized in such a way, they were considered less than human, just tools that could be used, worn out, thrown away, and replaced. I'm sure that left a long standing influence to the families and something that they probably never forgot about, even if they rarely spoke about it. Because as we all know, especially in the past, men were expected to be stoic, not complain, just work. They were supposed to be the breadwinners. They were expected to provide for their families, and not being able to do that was psychologically damaging to them.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to add here the role of women of the Bracero program. So actually, this is kind of new information to me when I think about um, collecting cotton. So we already learned that the colored people, the black people, come to the U.S. And collect cotton, but now I know that there's a Bracero program, and um, so women had to manage households and sometimes fight work, showcasing their resilience and highlighting the gendered impact of labor migration. So this separation from the man and the family affect and alter family dynamic, as we did discuss this in our readings and class. So I would like to say that the absence of men lead to significant shifts in gender roles. Women took on new responsibilities, including financial management and community leadership, challenging existing gender norms. This shift exposed women to new forms of structural violence, such as economic hardship and social cruelty. scrutiny. We also examine the exploitative labor that you all talk about, um, not only affect the workers, but also affect their families. So, yeah, these exploitative conditions underscore the intersection of labor and structural violence as family dealt with instability and uncertainty. So that's my part for this segment. Thank you. So Zulema.
All right, thank you. So yes, definitely going into gender roles being challenged, labor rights being addressed, police abuse too. We get a little glimpse of that in the Cinco Miners film we watched, where the police officers thought they had the right to go behind the scenes and abuse these strikers. And we get a lot of domestic abuse from the families where the men don't want their wives to participate in their shoes. So there's a lot of closed doors. Domestic abuse. I'm sure happened in that time. Um, so it was really challenging for these families to struggle with all that combined, and it pushed a lot of old ways out, going into what Anne was saying, that it really brought up the woman movement. And from the film, we get a glimpse of that. We have Ramon getting angry at his wife and trying to force her to not participate in the strike. And we see what is the history of male authority in that moment. But his wife refusing and fights back and saying that that's something of the past and that he couldn't have that authority over her anymore. So we see her embracing the power she now has had a taste of. So these women are now stepping up for themselves, knowing that they have the ability to do what the men can do for them too. So that was a really good, I think, positive movement in that direction. But I do think that the Prosero program and the Sync minors were challenging in history for these families. All right. Any other input for that?
I think we're good.
Okay. So going into segment 4, that would be the sexuality in families.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I had my smart speaker connected and it was talking to me. I'm like, shut up. I unplugged it. It's good.
All right. So, what I had said for this segment is gender and sexuality have risen many challenges and pushed many families to endure such hardships found in common, typical Latinx families. Going into the material, I thought that proved my case very well was the story of the San Antonio Four. In the film, we followed the story of 4 women who were wrongfully convicted into having taken part of sexually abusing 2 young girls, all because they were who they were in a time where no one seemed to think being gay was right. It was stated that the whole community at the time had hatred for those who were gay, especially because of the whole movement of satanic rituals being pushed together with those who were gay. In the Cuevas introduction, it was stated that these women were advised by the lawyers to be dressed in dresses to look more feminine. This would perhaps sway the community into thinking they were not lesbian. Why would it have mattered if they were lesbian or not, if it had something? But it did at the end. It had, unfortunately, persuade the jury to think otherwise. The information was biased to begin with by the community, so no one can imagine the kinds of emotions it had the people feeling when they heard such allegations from these women, along with what conspired in their heads. These 4 women had to push for their innocence and face such challenges from their community and themselves. The community, having had turned their backs to them serving time for a crime that had not even occurred. This proving that being a lesbian woman in this specific time was not easy. At the end, after such a long battle, these four women were free and given a clean slate. Although they did not make them forget what they have learned throughout those years, these girls thankfully had each other and their families who had not given up on them. They helped them keep fighting throughout the entire process. In Cuevo's introduction, we get a proper term for such hardships when it comes to gender and sexuality. She states that this is called the post-borderland. She defines it as the site where gender variance pushes beyond the known frame of meaning and reformulating the potential of / for the Chicano X families. All right.
I have something to add on to yours. So like even though there was evidence to cover their alibi, they're still found guilty. They also mentioned how like the woman's conflicting work schedule proved that they couldn't have been there at the time of the rape, yet they were still convicted. There's also a time where Ramirez wasn't being taken seriously when she explained to her attorney about how the young girl's father may have been involved because she rebuffed sexual advances. And then one of the jurors was a preacher who was against homosexuality. And then it was also hard to find jurors who weren't homophobic. So like these women were treated badly not only because of their race, but also because they were lesbians. Yeah, I just want to add that to yours. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the San Antonio 4 is Antonio 4. Sorry. That story is like I enjoy reading the article too, but now I would like to focus on the Central America family story and what I learned from you, all three of you, in your discussion. I remember, Anna, you summarized the story very well. You said that Anna, the youngest sister, was kicked out of her family in Honduras for being a lesbian and hoped to rebuild bonds with her sister Cecile in the US. However, Cecil's new homophobic husband, Andreas, saw Anna as a threat to their children. This illustrates the challenges queer individuals face in seeking acceptance and rebuilding familial relationships. And then Anna, you said that interestingly, Sergio's coming out as gay strengthened his relationship with his daughter, Cansandra. His openness allowed her to see him as a new light and accept him, showing how vulnerability. I'm so sorry. I need to do that again. What is that? How can we say that?
Vulnerability. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I would say that again. So his openness allowed her to see him in a new light and accept him, showing how vulnerability and communication can transform familial relationships. And this quote is from Zulema. She said that the story highlighted the struggles of undocumented immigrant families, including navigating invalidating legal system, dealing with emotional risk from physical distance, and facing the devastating effects of familial rejection. These layers of complexity add to the challenge faced by genderqueer and queer individuals. And from Nicki, I learned a lot from you too. The way that you make things very clear and short and straight to the point. I love that too. Yeah, so that's all from me.
Yeah,
Yes, Anna.
yeah, once again, as Anne pointed out, it was really interesting how Anna in the review of the story, she was not only kicked out by her birth family, she was also kicked out by her chosen family that she had formed by immigrating to the United States, joining with her sister and brother-in-law, and helping to raise her nieces and nephews. And once again, the juxtaposition of the consequences for being a queer woman versus the consequences of being a queer man. Anna was separated from her nieces and nephews, who she loved more than anything, and her sister. Meanwhile, Sergio, the father of her nieces and nephews, became closer with his children. So he lost a wife, but because he came out as gay, so he was obviously not happy being married to a woman. But he still ended up winning, whereas Anna ended up completely alone with no family, birth family or chosen family or otherwise. She was alone. She ended up having to struggle to find a place to live. She lost not only her family, she lost her home twice because she was kicked out of her home in Honduras with her birth family and kicked out of her home again that she shared with her sister. And just the gender disparity is just striking, because they were all undocumented, uh, and they were all working menial jobs. She was basically there to help her sister raise the children so that her sister Cecile and Sergio could work more, and because they were undocumented, they had to work menial jobs, low paying jobs to support their families. So yeah, just I had to point out the gender disparity on that. Although being male and queer doesn't shield you completely from consequences, as we saw in the article. Where did I put my notes here? I lost my note, I think. There we go. The article, you just don't know how much he meant. Deviancy, death, and the evaluation. And I wrote the author down. It was Liz something. Shoot, I wrote it down and I lost it.
Lisa Katsu?
I'm sorry?
Lisa Katsu?
Oh, yeah, that's her. When her cousin passed away, her male cousin, in a car accident in which he was riding with three of his friends and two of his other friends were killed. He was seen as deviant within his family and the community because he was not following the gender norms, which for a young man, it was expected that they would have girlfriends, have jobs, worked towards getting married and having children and raising a family. And he just didn't seem particularly motivated to do any of those things. He's rather spend time hanging out with his male friends, which may have or may not have been queer. I don't think they found any documentation to prove that it was, but in the eyes of his Latinx family, it was seen as possibly a thing. As I know, as being a Latina myself, I know I hear with my older relatives whenever friends are particularly close, they start to worry about whether it's a queer relationship or not, even if there is absolutely no reason to believe otherwise. And unfortunately, that was one of the factors that made the media paint him and his friends as their fate of dying in an intoxicated driving accident as almost inevitable, that they were just going to amount to no good anyway. They were on the wrong path, and there was, and of course being brown gave them very little chances to make anything of themselves or to bring value to the community or their families, which is really, really sad. And then when you juxtapose that with the baseball player for the Padres that died in a drunk driving accident. He was portrayed as a hero, as like, oh, he had potential that was lost. He could have gone so far. He had two, he had some young children who he wouldn't get to see grow up. It just they were both young. Just one was famous and popular and the other one was not, and he was also one was white and the other one was not. And just seeing the way the media portrayed him and the way even their own families saw them is just kind of jarring. So I just want to point that out, that being male and queer could have its advantages, but it's not always a shield that is constant there.
I agree. I believe that the eyes of others definitely have a big play into this whole dynamic. Even our families, they tend to judge us in a way where the society might have an opinion of us, and that personally coming from a, a Chicano and Latina background, a lot of like our religion, a lot of our traditional like roles, a lot of things that just get passed down through the family has an effect entirely on us. Everything, yeah, everything comes back through what they have learned. And so, in long run, hearing the history definitely has a contribution to what is being perceived today and now.
Mm-hmm. And what our own Latin community and the non-Latin community see is pretty intriguing to me. As for instance, I'm the mother of two young men. I don't call them boys because they're adults already. But it's funny because working in a grocery store, I have conversations with people all the time. And I remember mentioning when my son was turning 18, or that my son was turning 18, and a white customer asked me if he was working, and I said no, he didn't have a job yet. Then they asked me, "Are you going to kick him out?" And I responded, "No, I'm Mexican. He's going to live with me until he gets married, and then he moves out." Which is with a lot of immigrant communities, I find is actually true. In a lot of immigrant communities, children stay in the family until they get married and then they move out. Whereas in a lot of white families, they turn 18 and they're like, get a job or get out, which I find extremely sad. But I also point this out because I believe the fact that we're so close knit and we depend on each other so much is one of the reasons why we continue to survive and to thrive, because we depend on each other and we help each other. We don't just say, okay, well, you're an adult and you're useless to me, so get out. It's like we do see value in each other, whether we're contributing financially or not. We see more than that. And the fact that some people don't see that in their own family is kind of sad, really. But is a major difference I find between immigrant, not just Latino, but a lot of immigrant communities and non-immigrant communities.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have two of you in our group is what should I say, Latina? Yeah, and two of us is Vietnamese American.
Yeah.
Nicki, you're Vietnamese, right?
Yeah, Vietnamese too, yeah.
Yeah, and the Vietnamese American, we young adults stayed with family until they married.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Yeah, yeah, the Vietnamese people too. So sometimes this is what I wrote in my final paper. I said that sometimes I feel a bit jealous of you too, Zulema and Anna, of your firsthand insight, your experience and understanding about the course. But I thank you. I'm grateful that when I listen to your experience and understanding it helped my learning. Yeah. So I love that.
Oh yeah, and at the same time, though, Like I often feel we have well, I mean, as it's true with anyone, we really have more in common than we have that's different, and that includes as individuals and as within our families. I truly believe that, and I think that is what is going to unite us no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like, oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, um, it goes to show like how important families are. And like, even for me, I'm still at home living with my parents, even though I'm like, I just turned 28 recently. And like, for me, it feels normal, like to
Mm-hmm.
live with my family. And like, because I remember in high school, one of my teacher, she's white. So she's like, oh, right when her son turns 18, she kicks him out. And at that time, I thought it was normal. But now, like, as I'm getting older, I'm like, whoa, like that's pretty sad.
Yeah.
Because like in this economy, like how can an 18-year-old survive, you know?
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, like the
Uh,
economy now versus even like 20 years ago is completely different, and it's almost impossible for anyone to get by on their own
mhm.
unless they are born into a rich family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think unfortunately I think we could talk forever if we could, but we have to wrap this up. So I did write a small conclusion, but I definitely would like you guys to chime in and add anything. In conclusion, Chicanx and Latinx families are dynamic in their relationships to individuals and the many communities to which they belong. Romantic relationships, relationships to kin, neighbors, and communities in the workplace adapt, evolve, or self destruct according to the challenges presented and how they react to those challenges. Generations of nurturing love have given Latinx and Chicanx families, whether birth families or chosen families, resilience in the face of obstacles in a xenophobic nation that often views them as alien or deviant. Chicanx and Latinx families continue to demand and fight for the right for their own space and to define themselves as they choose. And if you guys have anything at all you'd like to add, you can go ahead.
Um, I feel like the main three is like love, family, community. Those like the three components, like where like them together is like unstoppable. Essentially, every community, family, and love, you're able to like persevere through racism, through yeah, all that. That's why I got yeah.
Perfect.
I agree.
So, and Zulema, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so just add the conclusion. So this class helped me personally appreciate the resilience and strength of Latinx communities despite the many challenges they face. Yeah, that's what I want to add.
All right.
So that's
Oh.
it.
Good. All right. So, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you guys. I hope we get to talk again. But if not, I'll see you guys in a year of graduation.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So question. So you will be the one who edit the video, Anna?
Well, I'll go ahead and send you the whole copy in its entirety. I don't have a lot of practice editing videos, so I'm gonna have to try to figure that out. But if we all have a copy, we can hopefully have a look at it. And yeah, definitely, I will try to edit it. I'll send you the original full, then try to edit it. And then once it's done, I'll send you both versions. And if you guys can do better, please try because I'm because I'm pretty much just looking up YouTube videos and online tutorials because I've never done this before.
Yeah, I have a YouTube account. I don't know if you read on the discussion I had commented.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't see that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Yeah, because I know I do have one, but literally it's been probably a couple decades since I posted anything on it. So yeah.
Definitely we can work on that. You have my number.
Okay. So I think that is it, unless anyone has anything else to add. Is it good?
That's it.
All right. Well, I'll let you guys go. You guys have a terrific day. Hopefully this recording goes well. And obviously, if something happens, I will let you know. But once again, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for all of you do. Thank you, everyone, Zulema and Nicki. It was great that we do it like done at one time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully we don't have technical difficulties. Because as much as I'd like to talk to you again, this was a little nerve-wracking.
Okay.
So take care, bye guys. Have a
Take
great day.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.